I honestly, after trying so many criminal cases, I just thought, okay, what could impact society more? It's a really high percentage of female CEOs who played competitive sports in high school. At the top of my paper, I always write, God is with you, from Judges 6:12. And I always pray the St. Michael prayer.
Legatus member Erin Mersino saw DEI's dark side early and led the fight against the HHS mandate at the Supreme Court, all while raising 5 boys. Hear her story and the future challenges approaching our country. Welcome to the 11 Talents Podcast.
All right, Erin Mersino, thank you for joining me for the 11 Talents Podcast.
Oh, thank you. I'm so honored to be here.
You are the lawyer extraordinaire when it comes to religious liberty cases. You've really dug in several different organizations. And so I just want to start off with, why is religious liberty at the forefront so much right now?
I think starting off with, why is it so important to fight for religious liberty? And when you look at the First Amendment and the protections that it gives to us, which we're very grateful for those protections, they're just words. So when you look at other countries, China has pretty similar language in their constitution, but clearly they have no religious liberty. So I think that our founding fathers were correct. Thomas Jefferson's attributed with the quote that we have to vigilantly fight for our freedoms. And so if we don't continue to bring these cases and to challenge when injustices occur, then we'll lose these liberties and we'll be living in a society that has no religious freedom. So I think it's extremely important. And seeing the challenges that really have been pretty significant, I would say, in the last 20 to 30 years, where religious liberty has really been attacked. It's important to stand up for what is right, because when you do, then that religious liberty is protected and it expands and broadens our freedoms.
You mentioned Thomas Jefferson, and so I did want to ask about the founding of our country. And I'm a politics major, so I dabbled in it a little bit. But when you read the writings of Alexis de Tocqueville and Thomas Jefferson, like you mentioned, what was it in England and probably the broader Europe that the founding fathers wanted to ensure did not happen here when it came to religious liberty that did happen, elsewhere?
Sure. So we can see that our country was founded by pilgrims seeking religious liberty. And
that was the whole premise, right? Escaping the...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And religion was controlled by the government, right? And here there's supposed to be freedom for different religions to practice, to worship, to live out, in your day-to-day conduct and decisions, and that it's somehow separated from the government and the government's control. So in other countries where the government dictates everything, it's quite different from here, where instead of dictating and regulating, there is a lack of that because it's an inalienable right. And so that there should be freedom to worship as you choose.
So 250 years ago now, we had this establishment. We've talked about the past 20 years or so. Between the past 20 years, though, and that 250, did we ever see a rise in this where we had to reestablish that perhaps gave us more of a basis for that religious liberty?
Yes, I think we're seeing that now in the courts with different cases that have come through. We've seen, like with the American Humanist Association, that case where there's a monument on public grounds, and whether or not that monument that's a cross can remain on public land, or if that's an Establishment Clause violation. And that was really kind of the beginning of this stream of cases, in my opinion. And you could see Justice Kagan, who at the time had been ruling more with the liberal justices, have a beautiful concurrence where she talks about tolerance of people who are different and pluralism. And so I think from that concurrence, and then you see the cases that have followed, like the Kennedy case, where there's a football coach who's praying, and after the games, it's not required that the players on the football team join him on the field, but if they want to voluntarily do so, they can and pray. And so I thought that was a really interesting case because it involved both the establishment clause, what the school was going to permit or not permit, the public school, and then also the freedom of exercise, where you had a person praying and it was their own individual freedom of exercise. And from that case, we saw an overruling of a case that had long been I would say, kind of like the bane of the existence of the Supreme Court. It had been insulted, the Lemon case, and it had been compared to Justice Scalia, compared it to a Frankenstein. And it just kept kind of rearing its ugly head. But then with this case, Kennedy, they overruled that precedent. And so no longer does it control establishment clause cases. And instead, the court looks to history and tradition. So that's been a huge sea change in our establishment clause jurisprudence.
Okay.
So
let's talk a little bit about your background, though. I mean, you did not initially going into law school. You went to Ave Maria School of Law,
yes,
right?
Which is the best law school there is.
Yeah. Where did you go to undergrad?
The University of Michigan in Ann Arbor.
Okay. So Wolverine.
Yes.
But you didn't actually go to school or think that you were going to get into religious liberty, right? I mean, you started in a different field.
Yes. So I majored in theater, actually.
Theater, okay.
At the University of Michigan. Yes. So I went to my counselor to declare a major, and she said, well, you can just graduate next semester if you want, if you major in a Bachelor of Arts in Theater. And I was like, that's great. Let's graduate early.
Yeah.
And actually, the day of my graduation, after there was the big graduation at the big house in Ann Arbor, I went to Zingerman's with my family. And guess who I ran into at Zingerman's?
Was it a justice of the Supreme Court?
No, that would be, but even better, Tom Monahan.
Oh, okay.
He was there, and my dad was so funny. He ran over to him and announced to him that I was graduating and that I had graduated early.
Oh, wow.
He was so kind. He was like, oh, great.
You were raised Catholic? Cradle
Yes.
Catholic? Or okay.
Yes, raised Catholic. I would say I was kind of in a dark period of my faith during college. And I think that that's kind of typical, that people kind of step away and then God brings us back, right? But during college, you had to take a class, and now it would be called like a DEI class, but they called it Race, Ethnicity, and Inclusion. And for that class, I took a women's studies course.
That's always dangerous when you have a women's studies course.
Yes. And I took it not because of a desire to take it, but it fit within my schedule.
Yeah.
So you
were going for the quick route. I got you.
Yes. I was just going to check the boxes here. But I really vividly remember my professor talking to us, and there was such a victim mentality of women have been, pushed down in society and have been wronged and were told to stay at home, all of it's like really depressing, actually. And when I would read the course pack, like the readings for the class, I would end and just think, oh, this is just a terrible worldview.
Yeah.
How can you go through the life with this worldview without being angry and depressed? Because there was such a lack of hope in all of the readings.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that it really aligned with reality and, the dignity of the human person.
What was it in your life that relit that fire?
Going to law school. I remember my dad cut out an article from the Detroit Free Press that listed the top law schools in Michigan according to their bar results. And Ave Maria had the highest bar passage rate that year. Wow. And so I applied.
For a young school, that's really...
Yes.
I mean, it had only been established a couple of years by then, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it is very impressive. And he said, go and tour that school. So I did. And my tour guide is actually someone who I'm close friends with now. And she was pregnant at the time, and we just really hit it off. And she showed me the chapel. And it was like the first time I had been in a chapel in quite some time.
Wow.
and she genuflected, and I followed her. But I remember before I left the tour, she said, "You really remind me of students who are here, and I think you would really enjoy yourself if you went here." And it was just so kind, and it was very different than all of the other law schools that I had looked at.
Mm-hmm.
Decided to go there, and probably the most life-changing thing for me was there was a small group of women, law students, who would clean the chapel on Sunday nights and put new flowers in the vase at the chapel. And you do it alone, just alternating weeks. And that really quiet time with the Lord in the chapel just was the most fulfilling, wonderful time of the week for me.
So you met your husband, though, at law school, right?
I did, yes.
So that was another blessing of going to the particular Ave Maria Law School that you went to.
Definitely. He says that Tom Monahan is the best wingman.
I should use that.
Yes.
He
was for you,
that.
too.
Yeah, he was.
Yes.
But you went to law school, though, to go to religious liberty, right? Like, tell me a little bit about the path of what are the paths to law school in terms of how do you pick your field particularly, and then what did you pick?
Yes. So I went to law school. I was kind of lost, after college because I had graduated early and hadn't planned to. So I lived with my friend Erica in New York City for a year, and kind of went back to what some of my original plans were when I was growing up. I always thought I'd be a lawyer and a doctor.
Oh.
Yes. So I was like, well, I'll
Not
go
an
to law
actress.
school first and see. No. So that was kind of why I did it. And my uncle is a judge, and I had interned for him after I was in New York City. And my mom, I joke around about this, but my mom always said that he didn't even know how to tie his shoes. I can't believe he's a judge. So I thought, well, it must not be that hard.
Yeah.
But he was very gracious to me, and it was a really interesting internship. He handled criminal cases and civil cases, and seeing the people in front of him and how he treated them with such respect. But it was kind of just because I knew people who had gone to law school, and my mom had actually gone to law school very early on, I think like the early 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't have, other females in her class. And it was kind of an interesting experience for her. And then I had a grandma who was a court reporter who would always tell us with great excitement the stories of the cases that she transcribed before her. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of an interest, familial interest in law. And then I also got to see my dad be sued repeatedly as a business owner.
What was your dad's business?
Roll form machinery.
What is that? Tell me a little bit more about that, because I'm not into the whole machinery side of things.
So roll forming steel.
Okay.
Yes. So obviously very heavy equipment and dangerous, sort of factory, although I've been in the factory so much as a kid. And,
I assume not
very
the typical
specific rules, OSHA rules.
Yeah.
You have to be within these lines and wear a hard hat. And
So you saw him get sued a few times, and that kind of piqued your interest?
Yes. But it's always completely unjust. He was innocent. So,
Yeah.
Yes. So, but he had friends who were attorneys because he'd have so many cases that he'd have to fight against. And he was always wanting to fight it and, fight for truth when someone had brought something that was really unjust.
Well, so I've heard Tom mention a few times, one of the reasons he started Ave Maria School of Law was because in every corporate boardroom, there's a lawyer. Most lawmakers in Congress are lawyers. So you've got two really impactful groups of people that are going to law schools that are being trained, in woke ideology and bad law, et cetera. I mean, how important do you think that is, and are lawyers becoming lawyers to be in those boardrooms and to get into office?
I think some are. I think that there's certainly a group who are. And I think lawfare, for example, bringing lawsuits for political purposes against individuals who are kind of just caught in the crosshairs. I think it's a very dangerous thing. I had a case, it lasted a few years, and thank goodness ended with a wonderful result for my client. But I mean, the stress that it brought on her, this lawsuit that was brought for really solely political purposes. So I think that it can be really, really dangerous, really harmful, and not just for individuals, but society as a whole, because lawyers do shape policy. They write the laws that Congress passes. And yes, so I think it's a really important area where we need more morally grounded attorneys fighting for the preservation of our liberties.
So you cut your teeth as a prosecutor in your early law school or law days. How did you make the transition, and what made you make the transition to go full-time into religious liberty?
Yes. So I was a criminal prosecutor for 4 years, and that was exciting because I got to handle so many different trials, and it was great training. I would definitely recommend for people to try.
And what kind of trials are we talking about when you're a prosecutor?
It started quite small, and I was pregnant when I was hired there, so I've never known being a lawyer without being a mom. But so my first trial, I remember, was just possession of marijuana. It was, a misdemeanor offense.
Illegal, right? Yeah.
Yes, when it was still illegal, and trying my first case, and I actually just had a baby, and rushing to get to court, and putting the suit on, and I remember I ate donuts on the way into the trial.
Because you're multitasking here. You have to as a parent, right? You learn that
quickly. File, the court file, the exhibits in the trunk, and then powdered Timbits that I got all over my black suit.
Oh,
so
that's
then
not a good combo.
No. So then I got into court, and the detective who you would always have it's criminal law, so you'd have a detective who is like the lead detective on the case who would sit with you during the jury trial and help you say, I need this witness next, and we need, it'd be very helpful. And he's like, oh my goodness, you have to do something. You have to get this off of your jacket. So I tried, but it was just on there. But it actually, God's providence helped me because it was a circumstantial evidence case. It wasn't like you found it on the person and we knew that it was his. Instead, it was like all of these different pieces of evidence established that, yes, it was beyond a reasonable doubt. And so then I got to use that as argument to say, look at, you can see the stains. You don't see that I have a donut in my hand, but you can see that there's circumstantial evidence that, I did eat a donut today this morning on the way to court. And so it actually helped.
Wow.
So handling those sorts of cases, and when I was there, they gave more responsibility.
Yeah. Did you win that case, by the way?
Yes.
As a result of that?
Yes.
Look at that.
Yeah, God is so good.
How often does that happen to you when you are in a case? And I as a Marine, I think of A Few Good Men. Like that's my go-to lawyer movie, but also Marine movie.
Yes.
In that movie, they didn't come to the realization of what proof they needed until like actually during it. And then, you could think of something like Miracle on 34th, where it was like during it, they had this idea of bringing in mail from Santa, right? Tell me a little bit about the prep work. And then does that happen often where it's like the light goes off during the actual case?
Yes, I would say, the quote by Thornton Wilder from Our Town, which like, who is ever truly in the moment, poets and saints. And I think also maybe trial attorneys, because you have to be totally in the moment, listening, and you do so much prep work.
Yeah.
Right. I like to over prepare. So you think, all of these different contingencies, what if they happen? Then what do you do?
Sure.
In your preparation, which is such a gift. And because I always pray and just pray that the Holy Spirit fills my mouth with the right words and guides me to the right information that I really need to hear. But I think it happens because it is alive. It's a living being, the trial. And witnesses sometimes will say things that attorneys don't expect that they will say, even though you need to know the answer, to every question you ask the witness. That does happen. There are surprises. There's different jurors who you look at them and they've keyed in on something that you didn't think that they might key in on, and then you have to adjust what you're doing to meet their needs to show them the truth. So there's it's an exciting thing to go through. But
you have to be on your game and just be almost in the Catholic idea of surrender, whatever happens, and hopefully the Holy Spirit will inspire me. I mean, do you, as a lawyer and as a Catholic and a mom and a Legatus member, I mean, what's the prayer that you're praying before you go into court or into a case to give you the strength to win that case?
So at the top of my paper, I always write, God is with you, from Judges 6:12. And I always pray the St. Michael prayer. I love the rosary. I think that that's extremely powerful. The Divine Mercy Chaplet. I think sometimes it's just, dear Lord, please help me. I love you so much. Please let me do your will. The St. Thomas More prayer is gorgeous. And I love, there's a second part of the prayer that beyond, please, let me not lose my soul for a point, in court. It talks about family and being a good, for him, a family man and fulfilling his family's needs, which is really beautiful. And sometimes that second part of the prayer is cut off, but I think that that's one of the most beautiful, beautiful parts.
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah.
So what was it? What case as a prosecutor, or was it a case that, again, made you transition to religious liberty?
I honestly, after trying so many criminal cases, I just thought, okay, what could impact society more? Because you see the same sorts of repetition with criminal cases. And that's when I started applying again to the Thomas More Law Center in Ann Arbor. And at that point, I was so much more alive in my faith. And so that's what I was really feeling that God was calling me to do.
Was the HHS case that you fought, partly for us, for other clients too, was that one of the first cases you handled?
Yes. So I transitioned to religious liberty law and First Amendment law in 2011. And I got married in January of 2012. And I had worked a little bit on my honeymoon, which we took a week vacation, but I always think, oh my gosh, I can't take vacation, So I got back to the office and my boss said, I need you to come into my office. I need to talk with you privately. So I thought, oh no, I'm getting fired. And so I came into the office and I was like, I'm sorry, what may I do? And he's like, no, you're not getting fired, Erin. Your mentor, the other attorney at the law center, is leaving. So I need you to be lead on all of our cases. I was like, oh, well,
I've had that experience where you think you're going to get fired and you actually get promoted.
Yes. So then shortly after that, the HHS mandate cases, why the HHS decided to include all of the abortion-causing drugs.
Yeah. So this was a push. The beginning of the Obama era, or really it was towards the end of his second term, right?
Yes.
That he pushed this through with HHS.
Yes.
And it was adding the abortion coverage, abortion pill coverage on the insurances. And what else did it provide, the HHS mandates?
So it was anything that the HHS, which the federal agency deemed would be preventive care for women. So it was whatever they decided, and they decided that it would include these abortifacient drugs and birth control.
Even though this isn't necessarily preventative in our mind.
Yes.
This is an after the fact thing.
Yes.
But they didn't consider that because of their question of when conception really happens. Is that?
Yes, you do ask, what are they trying to prevent?
Right.
Yes. But it was the onslaught, plan B. And for people of faith, then that becomes a real problem.
Because they were basically saying all insurance carriers have to provide this, or all employers have to provide this for their employees.
Yes.
And it was mandated. Obviously, the word mandate, HHS mandate. Is that,
yes.
Am I saying that right?
That's right. So all employers who provide insurance and employers with over 25 employees, but then we also brought cases with employers with less than 25 employees who felt the moral requirement to provide health insurance for their employees who otherwise wouldn't be able to obtain it. So.
Yeah. That's a Supreme Court case, right?
Yes. So one of our cases went to the Supreme Court and we won at the Supreme Court level.
Tell me about preparing for that.
So with the HHS mandate, we were so blessed to get the second injunction against the mandate in the country. But we brought 36 plaintiffs, and it was less than that in terms of cases. 36 plaintiffs' complaints.
Which Legatus was one of those, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And so Legatus was in that case, which was the second victory in the whole country.
Wow.
So at the time, and really amazingly, after we filed everything and we were in the process of fighting for the temporary restraining order, which we got, and the preliminary injunction, which we got, at that same time, I learned of this other case. And the person handling it was a fellow Ave Maria School of Law graduate,
wow.
Matt Bowman.
Yeah.
And so I called him up and I said, "Hey, Matt, I see your case that you just filed." And so that was great. So then, but beyond that, the team of people fighting for this grew and grew. And so many different employers brought lawsuits from all of the different organizations that fight for religious liberty. And so it was really a blessing because I think there's safety in numbers. And when so many people are challenging something, then people are more apt to listen and be attentive to what's going on.
What kind of cases did we see before the HHS mandate that were religious liberty infringement cases?
There were some cases that were pretty similar, but from the point of view of like a pharmacist who was then required to fulfill these drugs. I actually met that plaintiff at a March for Life.
Oh, wow.
I saw him and and that was great. But there's always, there's been different challenges like religion in schools and what's allowed and what's not allowed. And just here in Ann Arbor, for example, the Hansen case where there is a panel that the school put on about gay marriage, but they wouldn't allow a traditional biblical view on the subject to be voiced and tried to silence that view. There's, so many different cases in this area.
So HHS happens and it seems like there's just now an onslaught of religious liberty cases that occur. Can you talk about a few of those that you worked on directly?
Sure. So right now we have a case before the Supreme Court where we've asked the court to take it up. It's a church that's been fined over $1.2 million, and then adding on attorney's fees to that, it would be almost $3 million in fines for opening their church for worship during COVID. And the church is in California, so it's the same regulations that the Supreme Court has struck down so many different times as being a violation of the First Amendment.
So you feel pretty strong about this case, given that there's precedent for striking this down.
I do. I hope it's before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court meets in a conference, and the conference isn't open to the public, and it requires, I think, 4 votes of the justices to determine whether or not they're going to take the case. Okay. And so they have a discussion, and then they make a decision. And normally they say, it's granted, it's denied, or it's relisted. With this case right now, it's something that I've never seen before. They didn't do anything. So it's before
Meaning like
the
they
court.
Didn't review it, or they just...
No, it's been conferenced.
Okay.
And it's on the docket that it's conferenced. so it's really interesting to me what's going to happen with this case. But I think it's good news. Anytime you don't get a denial, because there's like a 2% chance that the court will take up a petition at the Supreme Court level.
And what does that mean, take up a petition?
That's when the case goes to the Supreme Court and you're saying, please take up our case because there's been this injustice in the lower court and we need you to hear it to rectify that.
Yeah. As a Catholic going into the court and defending folks of all different faiths, especially when it comes to religious liberty, because it's not just Catholics or Christians, right? It's, all walks of faith. How do you live out your faith? How do you witness to your faith, whether it's with your clients or in the courtroom?
Yes. So I'm still just trying like everybody else, and I'm certainly a sinner. I want to do my best, and I love God. I love our Lord. With clients, we pray together, which is really wonderful. I don't think that you can get through something as difficult as litigation without a really strong reliance on our Lord and without just that hope that God brings to us that nothing else could ever match,
Is that ever intimidating to you to suggest, let's pray and as a lawyer worry that they're going to get offended? Like how dare you bring your faith into our relationship or perhaps maybe worry that they're going to fire you?
No.
Yeah.
No, I a person is allowed to pray.
Yeah.
And if someone really wants to fire me because I'm praying and I'm faithful, then I don't think that that's my problem. I think that that's something they're working through, and I'll pray for them through that, even if they don't like it.
Have you ever had to say no to a case because of your religious beliefs?
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about it?
I don't think I should. I think it's kind of protected by attorney-client privilege. But yes, there's been times where I'm like, oh, this is not something that we should do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I assume with that comes obviously a loss of revenue for you and the company you're representing, but that's important enough for you to say, here's the line for me.
Yeah, you have to. Why else? You have to draw the line. Otherwise, you have to put up with, what the effect of not drawing that line is, and who wants to deal with that?
So you talked a little bit about your husband who you met in law school, and he's now running a law firm. Is there ever the conversation of like, hey, Erin, I want to hire you to come work for my law firm now? Away from the religious liberty firm you're working for?
No, I don't think he
Y'all don't do well working together on the same case? Is that
We did work together on a case, actually.
Okay, tell me about that.
We worked together on one case. Chris Kyle was
the American Sniper.
Yeah, American Sniper.
Yeah.
His wife was at first he was sued for defamation.
Is that her name?
Yes,
okay.
Taya Kyle.
I worked with Chris Kyle actually in the Marine Corps, so
oh my goodness, that's amazing.
I'm a little familiar with his story in Iraq, actually. So
that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
So what happened?
He was sued by the ex-wrestler Jesse Ventura.
Yes.
And so I was reading about the case.
What was he sued for? Remind me the specifics around what happened.
He was sued for defamation from a passage in his book that never mentioned Jesse Ventura's name.
Okay.
But so the case had gone through the trial court, and we weren't involved at all at the trial court, but the decision came out against, it was the estate of Chris Kyle because he had been killed at that point. So really going after his widow. And so that's just wrong, right? And
yeah, I mean,
yes.
How can his wife or the estate really be held responsible for something that, is that how it was viewed? Like,
yeah, there are different kind of nuanced legal issues in the case that are probably pretty boring in defamation law and unjust enrichment. And but at the appellate level, so it was in the appeals court when Paul and I got involved. And so we drafted a brief, and the case was overturned, thank goodness, the jury's decision, because it was, I think, maybe $4 or $5 million, the verdict against this widow.
Wow.
It's just wrong.
Yeah.
So it was overturned. Thank
So
goodness.
did you get to meet her and conference with her?
No, I never met her. No.
So how does that work then? I mean, if you're defending her,
we were a friend of the court brief.
Okay.
So she had her counsel, the same counsel as the
basically
trial
the
court.
amicus brief, right? Is that?
Yes,
Get
exactly.
fancy with our Latin,
Oh,
right?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we wrote an amicus brief.
Okay.
And the court actually adopted the reasoning in our amicus brief. But through that, I think we learned that we're both maybe too intense to work on something together.
You've got 5 sons. What's life like at the Mersino house? And how does the faith permeate and make be at the center of that family relationship?
Yes. Well, faith is definitely the center of our relationship. Praying together is at the center. Trying to be like Jesus in our interactions and failing and trying again. I would say it looks peaceful at times and completely chaotic at other times.
Organized chaos? Is that
yes.
a good way to describe it?
Sometimes even disorganized chaos. There are 5 boys,
Yeah.
But I love them so much. I feel so blessed to be their mom. And they're great human beings. And
one of your sons is special needs. I'm curious if you could share a little bit about that, because this is your 5th son, right? Your youngest?
Yes.
How does the family respond to that, and how do you prepare the family? If somebody's watching this that maybe they just found out that they're pregnant with the special needs, and how do I approach this? How did you all approach it?
So I would say God really prepared us very uniquely and individually. So when we were having our 3rd son, Justin, the doctor called and said that there's abnormalities on your ultrasound and they're consistent with perhaps a diagnosis of Down syndrome. There's something with the length of his femur and nuchal fold. And so then the doctor had really no bedside manner and said, do you want to start over again? Or
meaning, do you want to just have an abortion and start over?
Yeah.
That's what he meant? Wow.
And I don't think the doctor was even pro-abortion. I think he felt like he had to say that or something for malpractice insurance. It was very strange, but he really did not have a bedside manner. And we're like, oh, great, we're going to hire a different doctor. Thanks so much,
Wow.
And then got a great doctor. But we had gone through, the process of hearing the news and trying to unite, with Jesus on the cross and, please, show us wisdom, show us strength. And so we'd been through that process. And then lo and behold, Justin did not have Down syndrome, is very healthy. And
did they just blame it on shadows and the ultrasound kind of thing?
Yeah.
I mean, so had you followed their advice, had you had an abortion,
he would be dead.
But how many times does that happen? You have to wonder.
I know. I mean, the statistics are in this country that it could be anywhere from 67% to 85%.
For misdiagnosis?
That children are killed because they have a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome.
Wow.
Yes.
So that helped you as a couple, as a family, to prepare for what could have happened.
Yes.
And then
a few years later, we get the same call. I'm like, this is great. Yeah. We know how to do this. We've been here before. We're strong enough for this.
Yeah.
So it was such a blessing. He did have a lot of fluid on his heart, and so they didn't know if he would make it. And so that too, we were just praying so hard that he lived, and he was actually accidentally born at home. Paul was so strong throughout that, but so he came 3 weeks early.
So you pushed it too much.
Yes,
that might be the wrong word, but you waited too long to get to the hospital, and
I had a to-do list of things that I needed to do before we were going to have Jacob, and then it kind of got shorter to things that I need to do before tomorrow. And, I have to pack the kids' snacks. I have to drive them to school.
Yep.
I have to finish writing a motion, So I was trying to get these things done. And it just did not happen because then I realized, and
it's how
time.
how did Paul do as a birthing as a doctor at home
as an impromptu doctor? He did really well. So at first I said, Paul, we're not going to make it to the hospital. I'm sorry. And he said, you're kidding me. No. And I was like, no, I'm serious. The head is coming out right now. And he said, I've got this. And then just like went into action and was very confident in himself, and everything went well. Praise God. But Jacob was supposed to be born with all of these doctors surrounding him to make sure he was okay. And instead it was just Paul and I and Jacob, and all the kids stayed asleep upstairs, which was really amazing.
Wow.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Yes.
What's on the horizon for religious liberty that we should be on the lookout for?
Well, so many things. So we're still not done with what is the proper interpretation of Title IX. Is it biological sex or is it gender identity? That's a case that the Supreme Court heard oral argument for, but there's going to be years of litigation on that issue.
Years of litigation to determine what makes a man and what makes a woman, or years of litigation on men, or will men be allowed to play in women's sports and vice versa?
Yes.
Or both?
Yes. So right now, for example, we have a couple cases in California where there's a man in the locker room with our girls changing, and the school hasn't quite figured out. They said, okay, your girls need to go to a private bathroom down the hall. Mm-hmm. And, you know, just the different situations of being on the same team that's supposed to be, you know, a female team. There's intimate, you know, experiences with the team sleepovers, team pool parties, a lot of different situations that can be pretty uncomfortable when there's mixed sexes.
Well, yeah. And have to scratch your head and say, well, can't we just look at science to back this up and defend the case?
Yes.
I mean, why is that such a problem?
I know that was the whole purpose of Title IX too. It was based on, you know, distinguishing because of biological sex. Mm-hmm. And that was the impetus for the law being passed. And that's what it allows. It allows for separate teams based on sex to give women the opportunity to be competitive in sports because there are natural disadvantages. Mm-hmm. And we see that it's reaped really great, you know, wonderful benefits for society. When you see all of these female CEOs, it's a really high percentage of female CEOs who played competitive sports in high school. And so it's just interesting to have that competitive spirit fostered amongst women, or do you completely take it away from them by competing against someone who you can never beat because they have a biological advantage?
Is the U.S. usually the first country to handle issues like this, or whether it was HHS or same-sex marriage? Did we see that in another country and knew that it was kind of on the horizon for us? Or are we, as Americans, usually on the forefront of, unfortunately, on some of these changes?
Yes. So I think we see it happen in Europe many times before it happens in the United States.
Okay.
And we kind of see, and unfortunately, we're seeing trends in Europe of punishing free speech significantly. And so that's a concern. I hope that trend does not come overseas. But we do have a written constitution, which is different from you know, some European countries, and we do have more protections. And we are, you know, a country that was founded on these inalienable rights. So,
aside from the freedom of speech components, do you see anything happening outside the U.S. where you as a lawyer are saying, you know what, I need to learn more about this because, again, this is on the horizon for us?
So I think we have seen, and this is more historical, but we saw in England what happened with the gender reassignment therapy for minors, and how they, you know, peaked and now they have regulations, and
they've completely done a 180, right?
They have, yes. And then we've seen that kind of transfer over to how the United States is handling it. And we've seen states now pass laws to protect minors from those sorts of treatments and drugs.
Okay. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you.